You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Morning, everybody. Hi, this is Mike Balzer of All Things 3D, and this is 3D in Review for 10/21/2017. That's October 21. You know what? 2 days ago was the last debate in last year's election. Yes, I know I should have gotten over it, but I haven't. I will have a little sneak peek at something that I created using both Google Core AR as well as AR Kit. But until then, let's kind of get into the main theme of today, and that is the bold claim by Facebook that they'll be able to sell a billion VR headsets. Well, that might be quite possible. And let me jump to my capture and we'll go right to their page with the new Oculus Go, which, if you notice, was a small brief video that I showed. And this particular headset not only is very similar to their Oculus Rift CV that I own, and now that you can buy, I guess, what is it, $399, including the hand controllers, so it's very affordable. I have my reasonings for that, or my thinking on that. But as you can see there, it's light. I have a feeling it's going to compete with another product that was announced a little bit earlier, but the new phone came out, which I'm going to be doing a review of, mainly from the Daydream or the VR perspective and its usage in augmented reality or mixed reality. And also the debate about the poor screen on the Pixel 2 XL. Personally, I did not see that. So back to the Oculus Go. I'm really looking forward to this. Supposedly, it's retailing for $199. I just read last night that this will probably have a Snapdragon 821. I guess that was from an inside source. With that being the case, yes, it does have LCD versus OLED screens, but after obtaining the developer version of the Dell mixed reality headset, which also has LCD panels, I thought the experience was more than adequate. And at $199, if they can pull this off, utilizing some of their lens technology they used on the Oculus Oculus Rift CV, then yeah, I think this is exciting. Now, obviously, they're going to be moving this more into the social app area. So we'll see how that goes. But the fact is that you'll be able to watch videos, play a lot of Android or cardboard games, or more importantly, Gear VR based games. And some of them are pretty good, and they're getting better each day. I know the Daydream games are becoming more engrossing. And again, I'm not a big game player to begin with, so this isn't what I would be looking at. I would be looking at this headset being utilized in other fields, such as architectural visualization, engineering, for a large audience. So if you wanted to don this, also looking at this in mass transit, imagine being on an aircraft with something like this that would isolate your surroundings and allow you to watch a movie in peace and quiet. So at $199, that's retail. Imagine if you bought this in volume, if you were part of an airline or maybe even the bus system. Now, some people are concerned, well, you won't be able to see what's going on around you. Hopefully, that's not a huge issue, but I guess on some subways and mass transit systems, that could be a huge problem. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I've already got my name in for a developer kit. And we'll see. $199 sure seems like a too good to be true price, but if they can pull it off, or I should say anybody could pull it off, it would be Oculus. So this is kind of exciting. Comes with a little hand controller, very similar to the Daydream. So in fact, as I mentioned earlier, I think this is going to be like a Google Daydream type device, except it's all in one. I'm a little concerned because that means it would also include the battery, but having designed my own headset with the intention of keeping it lightweight, I still think it's very practical. And the fact is that you don't have to have a metal or plastic case around the screen as you would in a mobile phone. You can reduce the weight there. So, yeah, I think this would probably be very light. And at $199, I keep saying that. I think this is going to be, if they can get this out, they haven't even had FCC approval. I went out and looked at it, researched on Oculus. It still hasn't even been registered, or at least nothing public at this point. So if they can get it certified and out by the holidays, I think this is going to give the Microsoft mixed reality some competition. Okay, on that note, let's kind of go right into a couple of other updates, and one of them is the Microsoft. So I've got a little video, so let's kind of run that. They just put out their Creators Edition.
Let me show you everything I know.
So there's a little video, and yes, would you be able to do all that kind of creative stuff in Windows? I use Windows every day. I don't know if I would be considered creative, but I have been able to create a few things, and basically have used Windows for, what is it now, 30, about 30 years now? Has it been that long? So I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I do work with it. I also work with Mac OS, and personally, because I use the Windows environment more often, I find it much easier to get things done from my perspective. I know others would disagree with me. Some people even prefer Linux, and I have used a few versions of Linux, and I would have to agree it's gotten a lot better. However, some of the tools that I use just aren't there yet. They're getting there, but yeah, I'm obviously an Adobe user, and we're going to be talking about a few products from Adobe a little bit later. Okay, so what I'm trying to do right now is think and chew gum, and that doesn't really work very well with me. But let's see what I've got here. What I want to do is bring up on the laptop. So let me jump to that screen. Here we go. And let's find a little sneak peek. I didn't realize it would be out, and hopefully it is in this version. It might be in another beta version, but let's see. There we go. The mixed reality viewer. Now, you're probably thinking, well, what is this? If you've been keeping up with the news, something that they announced a couple of months back, but it was not supposed to be available in this release. Thankfully, it is. This is Microsoft's version of augmented reality, or mixed reality on a desktop. So here is obviously a cute little bird, but we can now look at it in a mixed reality system. And let's see, make sure that hopefully it'll pick up the right camera. But even with a laptop, and what I've done is set it up so that I've got a Logitech. No, won't do it. Well, we can do that. So there you go. Actually, it seems to track the plane pretty cool. That's kind of neat. So as you can see in my green screen behind me, let's go, there we go. So if I don't move, so essentially just like Core AR and AR Kit, it uses plane and cloud detection. And in this case, I can move the plane and my object moves. Don't know at this time if I will have the ability to do animation, but I would think you could. I don't have it set up. Oh, can I? Yes. So you can switch cameras. Let's see if it switches to the Logitech. There you go. So my very messy desktop there. So you could actually, let's see, let's turn that. So you could hook up any type of camera to it. Here I've got a USB based Logitech 920, but you could use a USB or HDMI to USB and use a fancier camera. So I see a lot more power in this if you're going to be using mixed reality to actually create video stuff. And so there you go. I've got a character there. You can go out to the Remix Studio, which I'll do right now, and you can bring in other models. You can upload your own models. So we'll just go ahead and get started. So let's see, what do we want to bring? Let's bring in, this one looks fun. There we go. It's funny how it just took me right back to the wrong camera. But let's put that on my arm. There we go. I got a bug on me. So as you can see, it's kind of fun. So if you've already got Windows, my question, if you read my show notes is, or my introduction to today's show, is it worth it? Sure. It's a free update if you already got the Windows 10 Creator, and I would highly recommend it. Not only will there be security fixes, but also cool new tools. And if you do plan to get a mixed reality headset from Microsoft, it is obviously required for that as well. And I won't be talking about it today, but I think maybe next week I'll give a little more demo of both the mobile Nook unit that can power this so you can walk around, and why I think the Microsoft mixed reality system will have advantages over other tracking systems because you don't need to have any. Okay, enough toying around with that, but as you can see, it's pretty neat. And as mentioned, using the Remix 3D, you can upload your own stuff. You can also use Paint 3D to create or repaint things. I don't know, again, if you can do animation, but this is obviously their first version. I would think that that would be possible. There's probably also an SDK so that you could deploy this using your own animation. So I think this is going to be a pretty powerful tool. And again, if all you've got is a laptop, just remember a inexpensive USB-based webcam will provide you the capability of a back camera. And however, if you've got one of their Microsoft Surfaces or any of the third-party versions of the same thing, Windows tablets, most of them do come with a back-facing camera, and so you'll be able to utilize that as well. So I think that's kind of fun. So glad that it worked out today. I wasn't too sure if I could get it up and running so quickly, but as you can see, after the upgrade, I was able to use it very quickly. So everybody seems to be coming out with stuff. And speaking of that, let's jump right into the Android. Now, this was introduced a little bit earlier. This is Android 8 Oreo. So if you have any of the Pixels, this is already on your phone, but there will be other phones that will include this. I'm pretty sure the Notes 8 also had Android 8 when it came out. They do say it's faster. I think it's faster. I've been using the beta for some time, so it isn't as significant to me. But if you do get one of the newer phones, not only do you get the processing speed of the newer phones, but you also get, in my opinion, a more optimized system. However, since this is all things 3D, I'm not going to talk about Android. There's enough other shows out there. What I want to talk about is Daydream. And there are a couple of features in there, and I showed some of them off 2 weeks ago with Daydream, and that is now the ability to Chromecast your actual VR experience onto a large screen TV. I did notice that it did not cast the audio, and I don't know if that's by design or just you have to give permission for that. But I do think that the whole performance is much better, especially now that the Pixel 2 have the Snapdragon 835 that adds some performance. But as I will talk about a little bit later in my own review of the Pixel 2 XL, it's not as much of a performance gain as you would think. So the big question is, well, is it worth having the larger screen? Yes, there's a lot of controversy over it, but in my opinion, especially if you're going to be using it for VR, the screen is great. I have no problems with it. In fact, I have some ideas of why that you have that blue tint or blue cast as you rotate it. And I actually tweeted a couple or yesterday afternoon with a overcast sun over my shoulder that I think that's the big reason. It continues to allow you to see your screen. Now, there are some other reasons why OLEDs have a circular polarized screen, but I think that is one of the more important reasons. It just keeps the glare off the screen. And frankly, I think that's kind of funny because it's still a glossy screen, so you still get a lot of reflections. But they announced a new Daydream headset. Mine isn't in yet, but basically it's very similar to the previous model. They've made a few changes, like adding a head strap, even though I guess this may yeah, I guess this is, no, that isn't the new one. Or is it? Yeah, they're not even showing the new one here. Interesting. The newer headset now has a strap on the side to hold the controller here. Let me do that real quick. Let me jump back to my main screen. Let's jump. Oops, you know what? I apologize. Um, that's what happens when I get ahead of myself. Okay, so let me go ahead and search for the new Daydream viewer so we can take a look at it. I think it's in the Google Store. Let's see if they've updated their images. Okay. Well, okay, so this does look like the newer one. Okay, so um, again, I'll give a hands-on demo a little bit later, probably either next week or the week after. So they've changed a few things. They've now ventilated the back plate. A lot of people complain because clearly you're obscuring the back of the unit, so it obviously isolates heat. So now I guess there may be some, even though there doesn't show to be vents, it might have either a metal plating. Again, I don't know this. I don't have one yet. But here you can clearly see the vent on top, which I guess is a nice idea, which means they no longer have the depressed area in the plate to put the controller. And now there's a loop in the back of it that allows that to be done. Now, I did thought there was an extra headband on top, but it doesn't appear to be, or at least it doesn't seem to be. So it's very similar. The other thing that's different is they've gone to a Fresnel lens, which I'm not a big fan. I have a couple of designs of my own that use it. So I don't know the size of these, but like a lot of Fresnel lens designs, is you can change the shape of them. So they've cut out a little bit for your nose, which is probably a good idea. So do not know at this time how large they are, but they say that does increase the FOV by about 10 degrees. But again, we'll have to see. The other thing is, now keep in mind that this here is a standard Pixel. It's probably the Pixel 2, yeah, because it's got the stereo speakers. Pixel 2 instead of the Pixel 2 XL. And why does that matter? If you notice the size of the actual player, and let's see, I'll bring my old version up. This is what's important. And let me jump back to my main screen. See the cutout here? This cutout here is made more or optimized for the smaller phone. So when you put in a larger phone, and I'm going to use just my standard Pixel right now so you can see this. Okay. Let's see if we can do that. So see how it overlaps? And I mean, we're not just talking a few pixels. It's pretty significant. I'd say about 3% of the phone. Um, it's not so bad on this, but let's look at the new Pixel 2 XL, which has clearly a much wider screen. Let me turn it on. There you go. Can you see that? So you have a significant reduction in the screen. And the cool thing about this particular screen is that it's an 18:9. So that's really a 1-to-1 ratio per eye, give or take a few pixels for the center area. But because of that, you get a better, what do you want to call it, symmetrical view, because you're literally taking a lens that is spherical and projecting it down into a square versus having part of it cut off. So the fact is that they're chopping off the edges of it. In my opinion, reduces the FOV. And a reason that I will be taking the Niobe IO Play, which was made specifically for the Pixel XL, and here I'll show you that. If you can see, here's the screen, here's the lens box. It again has a huge overlap, but if you notice, because I use a standard square dimensions of the screen itself, you can see it more predominantly here. And let me turn it back on. Let's see, get a wider screen there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is redesign the lens box, same 42 millimeter spherical lenses, but redesign it so that it goes all the way to the edges to give you the maximum FOV possible. I should have some prototypes available. If anybody out there who's listening is interested in beta testing, give me a shout out, because I'm going to probably have a couple to push out there for that. The goal is to try and get these done by the holiday. Obviously, even though there were some mechanical designs already available for the Pixel 2 XL, I obviously didn't want to design around that without actually having a real unit. And luckily, and I don't know if I was just close to where they were shipping them, but I got mine ahead of a few people, so I'm happy for that. And yeah, I'm very happy with it, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So with that in mind, Daydream seems to perform a little better, but I think that's because of the phone. Oh, it's talking to me. And oh, that's right, because I said Google, sorry. And so I personally think if you're in for a new phone, the new Pixels are great, but keep in mind the old Pixels are still decent phones. In fact, since I'll be using this, my new one, mainly for development right now, I'm still going to just carry around my standard Pixel XL, which works just fine for normal day-to-day use. The only reason I would suggest getting one is if you have any higher performing apps, and then it might be worth to getting the Snapdragon 835 in it. Okay, so let's move on. We've got a couple of other things that I thought were cool in the news. Let's see. Here we go. I had covered this when it first came out, and then I forgot about it. And now I'm able to happily say that I have finally obtained the actual version of this, and I think it's pretty cool. Now, here you see it on I think that's an iPad, smaller iPad mini, but they do have a version for a tablet, but they also have a Windows, a cloud version, which is right here. I will go ahead and log in. And we'll just bring in, I don't know, let's bring in the game controller. So essentially, you draw on basically a graph type paper, and you can draw squares, shapes. Let's draw a star. Whoops, actually, I guess then here we go. And then you can, yeah, that's interesting. So I can get different shape. And if you notice over in the right panel, it creates an automatic extrusion. And then you can manipulate the 3D portion of this by these little things down here. So you select a object and then you can here increase the size of it, or you can go back to the 2D version and let's see. Okay, well, I don't. It's not working for me. Maybe I have to turn this off. Well, it was working the other day, but to increase its size on the XY, you would just pull on these bars over here. To increase its height, you can just do that in the 3D mode. Then they have some other cool features like this that you can modify the shapes. And let's see, yeah, and then you can add new points in it. So it's really easy to work with. It's fun. Great if you've got kids and want to get them introduced into 3D. And they offer a wide variety of ways of exporting, which let's see, I'll bring up. I also like the cute kind of interface that they provided for it. But yeah, you can export, so you can print it directly out to your Wi-Fi. They've got their own little Wi-Fi kit to hook up to your printer. So if you want to look into that, or you can save it in STL or as an OBJ, and then directly out to different services as well. And then you can actually save the sketch in its own raw format to bring in later on, or put up to theirs to share so that you can show off your stuff in their own little cloud library. So I thought that was pretty cool. So let's go to this. Notice I can select an object, and there I can that's kind of neat. So I'm pulling the object out. So there you go. You can have a really big button. Let's try that with another one. So of course it's not as fancy as some other applications, but I don't think it was meant to be. I think it was supposed to be fun and fun to look at and play with. And then there's other features like you can duplicate, delete, like I can delete the button there. And then there is obviously undo, which is a great feature, especially for me, or a redo button. But you know, it has a comic book type feel to it, so I kind of like it. It's fun. So it's available, and if you weren't part of the Kickstarter, you can still get it for about what was it in pounds? Like 26 pounds or something like that. So it's about $35, $32, something like that. So it's not that expensive. That gives you a lifetime version for your for the cloud. I don't know what platforms it's available from a smartphone or tablet. I do know there's an iPhone version. They may already have an Android version available. But let's see, maybe we can go back and take a look at it. So that's Transform from Doodle 3D. Okay, let's see. Okay, so that just takes you directly into their interface. Yeah, it doesn't appear to be. And I guess I could bring up the, let's see. Yeah. Well, I don't see it there yet. So I don't think it's available for Android, but I did notice there seems to be a few other little videos or apps out there for doing 3D on your Android device. Oh, well, maybe another episode I'll look into that. Okay, so let's see. What else do I got? Oh, one other thing I thought was kind of cool. Let's see. This was just announced. This is, we've had them on the show, interviewed them. This is Crow Team. They have a product called Talos Principle. Then I kind of hinted for them to make a VR version of it. They finally have come out with it. Didn't get a chance to load it yet. I will do that next week and give more of an impression on it. But not only are you immersed in the VR experience, but your controllers also work and allow you to manipulate objects. They had a version that they created for Destination, which is the, what do you want to call it, the Valve engine for, I think it's version 2 that they set up for Destination to do VR things directly in the Steam system. They did create a version of that, so I'm familiar with it. We'll possibly look at, but they didn't really have any interactivity. Now this version has all the puzzles, but you're immersed in it. And if you're not familiar with it, it is a very interesting game. Obviously, there isn't a lot of. It's kind of funny. Crow Team is also known for Serious Sam, which is now in VR, which is more of a all-out shooter. This is more cerebral and quiet. They've got nice music on it, and as you can see, their engine creates a fairly realistic environment. So I'm looking forward to that. I did think that there was a discount if you had already purchased it, but I did not see it. So I don't know for sure if it is available at the discount that they suggested. I will contact them. Otherwise, I think it's like $29 and you can get it in the Steam store. I don't know if there's any options to buy it directly. Now it takes you right out to the Steam store. So they have it here at 39. So it does appear there is a discount, but again, I'll have to go back and look at a couple of other articles on it that suggest that if you already own the Talos Principle, that the VR version is heavily discounted. But at this point, I am not sure. So if you don't own it, this actually is a great price, and it give you about 11 hours worth of, no, maybe me, it probably would take 100 hours. The puzzles aren't that difficult. Just don't think too much into them. And I don't know if the VR perspective will make them easier to understand. But essentially, they're three-dimensional puzzles. You have to like line up laser beams and so forth. It's pretty cool. I liked it a lot, and the music was very soothing, and the environments were pretty cool. So now I have to encourage them to make maybe a couple of levels of this for the mobile platform. And I also heard that this will be available for Microsoft Mixed Reality as well when they move over to Steam, which I guess will be in a month. I'm trying to get a developer version for that, and so we'll have to see where that goes. Okay, so there you go. That's about our updates. So let's get into our first news items. This actually, if you notice, I was not here last week. So I was going to talk about this last week, had, let's say emergency, but I had some other urgent requirements last week. So I just kind of took the Saturday off in order to take care of that. And so this was my item last week. And I thought this was really cool because it uses granulate materials in this case, metal, to extrude, very similar to the FDM printer you may have right now. Material, here's a little video. Actually, let's run it here. So give me a moment to set up. So as you can see, other than the German to identify the specifications, very intriguing printer. I don't know what the price will be. Let's see. I don't remember seeing a price, and there is no notes on it, but I thought this was a really cool device. If you're interested in printing in metal, this might be a good direction to go. Clearly, this isn't available yet, but I will keep looking into this and see when they actually will have versions that are in people's hands, and see how good it is. So, um, Chris, if you're out there, you might want to look into obtaining one of these. The other cool thing is, as mentioned, it uses these pellets, and there is a feeder. It says it's equivalent to about 1 kilogram of what do you want to call it, standard filament, if you load this thing up. But the fact is that most materials and sintering and other techniques come in pellet form. This offers a much better way, more efficient way to print with materials without the cost of extruding it into a filament first. So pretty exciting. It does identify metals, but I do think it also does plastic. Yeah, it says that in the first paragraph here. So again, I do not know the price, and I will look back into it a little bit later and see what this is. More than likely, it's going to be, I don't know, what, maybe $5,000 to $10,000. If that's the low end, it might be more than that. But I thought that was a very neat item. Um, and the prints look pretty good. Obviously, you can tell that they're FDM based, but the fact is that we can do metal, and it appeared aluminum was one of the items as well. So we're going to be seeing more metal printers, I think, in 2018. Okay, so let's move on to the next item. This was interesting, and I saw a clip. Oops, sorry about that. It appears it's the same thing. Hmm. Okay, so I'll just jump to this one first. Where are we at on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and, no, I don't want to do that yet. Okay, let's go into the design one, and then we'll hit the 360. So this is ArchiSketch, and I thought this was an intriguing little device. I'll play the little video. Let's see, do I have a version? Oh, where's it at? I am losing, well, we'll just play it right in here. This is a little video. Well, that probably gives you a good idea of what the product does. I thought this was very intriguing. Let me jump that. Okay. I thought this was very intriguing because unlike the structure sensor and the program canvas that I've used before that literally maps out the depth information for a full room and creates a mesh. This is more of what a laser measurement device that you could buy at Home Depot that you could attach to the either micro USB, micro USB-C, and then it says also an iOS device, even though the version appears to have, let's see if I can get a closer up view, appears to only have a micro USB port. Oh, well, it's not shown there. But here you go. Here's an image of the lens system. So clearly, if you've ever seen one of these range finders, uh, they kind of look like that. The fact that you can port it in and then use it with an app to not only obtain information, but as shown in the video, then you can then use, I guess, their cloud-based little floor plan designer. So even though they make it fairly easy, you still have to digitize each point in order to accumulate the edges. This here, they're doing it for service counters. But I think this is interesting for people that I had worked with to get our countertops done. Even though the structure sensor is a great little product, there is a little bit of accuracy issues with it that you have to make sure that you look into either with the original floor plans in order for it to work. Its strength obviously is to scan in the full thing. The fact that with this device, as you can see here, you can sample different points in 3D and then bring these into the device itself allows much more accurate measurements, and then you can just compile that data. And for countertops, they had this older device that they literally, it was like a coiled wire that was measured out, and they on like a gimbal, and that gimbal would provide the 3 degrees axis of XY, or the 6 degrees. So you would have the positional as well as the rotation that was accumulated from each sample, and then they were able to take those samples back into their shop and literally cut the granite or whatever material that your counters are being made to, so they could bring them back in and they would accurately fall into place with very little extra effort once they were laid down, which makes a lot of sense. So cut before being brought out. And I thought that was kind of neat. The funny thing is that particular product was, what was it, $10,000-$15,000. So if this has similar accuracy and is something that you can pop on your phone, accumulate data, and then literally send it back up in the cloud, I think this could be very beneficial to these people who require accurate um, measurements. And then, like I said, they have a cloud, so you could take floor plans. Uh, uh, Personally, I would bring this into SketchUp or some other form. They're also looking at VR, like some other products out there. But again, I would probably use Unity or Unreal. Um, but if you wanted an all-in-one unit, and it looked fairly easy to work with, pretty cool. Now, what is the price on it? Here's your accuracy, plus or minus 3 millimeter. Well, that's not great. But the fact is you can go from 0.03 meters to 40 meters. It's kind of cool. The measuring time from 0.3 to 3 seconds. And then, as I said, it's both for Android and iOS. And the great thing, I don't know if you've ever priced any of these digital rangefinders or laser rangefinders, but the fact is that you can get a early bird version, and might hurry. Actually, there's still plenty of left for $119. So that's pretty reasonable. I'm going to go sign up. Sad thing is, this won't be available to May 2018, but it does look like it has a large team, so they look like they're well in place to actually produce this. So I don't think you're going to lose out on it like somebody else, 6 cents maybe. But here you go. Here's some images. There you go. There's the micro USB, or it might be USB-C. I don't know how they will adapt it to a lightning port. I don't know if it'll be an adapter or that changes out. Unclear at this point. And let's see what else. And they say USB-C type. Okay, so you may have to have some type of adapter. I like these other little features if they meet their stretch goals, and that is a Bluetooth device that you can pop into this so that then you can just leave your phone or even tablets sitting somewhere and then accumulate your points. And then if they exceed they'll add an actual button to the device itself. If you notice, you had to actually have the phone and you clicked on the phone. This will add a button so your samples don't require you to click on the phone. You just click on the unit itself. And the way this thing uh, sets itself up on the phone, there we go. To me, it seems like it'd be much more convenient to be able to just put your thumb right on top of it and click it instead of having to hold it with 2 points, or with the Bluetooth device, not even have your phone or tablet hooked up to it. And who knows, with Bluetooth only, you could probably work with other devices as well. Well, I think that's kind of a neat device. It's obviously, if you get in on the early bird, it's very reasonable. And if you need something to create accurate plus or minus 3 millimeters measurements, this might be the device to look at. And I've reached out to them. Hopefully they'll get back to me. Maybe I'll be able to get a review unit sooner than, what did I say, May of 2018. Okay, so let's move on to, here we go. I had it in the wrong section. So this is both medical and 3D scanning, and the other device obviously is somewhat of a 3D scanner. It's basically a single point 3D scanning device. But this here I thought was pretty cool because one of the reasons it caught my attention, if you remember, if you've been following the show, I had worked in early preliminary what would you call it, studies in using the structure sensor to scan children at the Shriners Burn Center in Sacramento. Sadly, it didn't go very far. I think the choice to move forward with it was dampened because they had already spent close to $100,000, $150,000 on another type of scanner. But needless to say, it did garner a little bit of attention, and who knows, maybe they'll still move forward with it. But this particular device I think is pretty cool because if you're familiar with lymphoma, or in this case that's the name of the company, Lymphtic, but this allows a person to have their legs scanned and basically monitor the swelling over periods of time. And it wasn't clear to me how this would determine a particular type of what do they call it, lymphatic filariasis. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, but this is clearly something that affects people. In myself, I do get some swelling, and there was some suspicion that I had some type of lymphatic problem as well. Mine, I think, is more to do with that I don't sleep much. I find when I sleep better, I don't have any swelling, but that's besides the point. So I thought this was very cool, and I can see it. As you remember, I also used 3D scanning to scan my wife Siobhan's face after her surgery, and send that back to her surgeon so that they could view in 3D the progress around her eye. So I see clearly how three-dimensional information can be possible. The fact is that we have a company who is obviously working with that. And I want to say that it doesn't clearly identify what they're using. Uh, it doesn't really clearly say what type of device they're working with. But these particular scans here do not look any better than the structure sensor. So I would not be surprised if this was not a structure sensor, but I think it's a very cool, again, application of structure sensors, or as I call it, surface 3D scanners. And the fact that you can do this and then scan and then be able to send that information to somebody in another location to analyze is very important, and requires less expertise in the field. And as you can see on this map here, some of these areas are difficult to get to or get the responses required. And this would allow more information to be reviewed and analyzed without having to be physically there. Okay, the other item, and I have a little video that I'm going to show, so bear with me, is this little device here. Well, not little device, it's a big device, but it's called PET scanning.
Meet Dave. He's about to have a brain scan. Using the latest PET imaging technology, doctors will see Dave's brain at work. It's all possible because of tiny tracers, specially designed radioactive molecules. The PET scanner tracks the position of the tracers inside Dave, revealing his brain function in 3 dimensions. The tracers don't come from a stockroom shelf. Each one has to be made fresh at a nearby laboratory. This is Dr. Miller. He's making the tracer for Dave's PET scan. First, he needs to produce the radioactivity using a device called a cyclotron. It smashes high-speed particles into ordinary atoms, transforming them into new radioactive atoms. Now the clock is ticking. The new atoms are giving off their radioactivity, becoming plain old regular atoms again. There goes one. It means Dr. Miller and his team have to work quickly to build the tracer, a biological molecule. This is what makes PET so unique. The molecule could be anything: a sugar, a protein, a hormone. Each one is tailored to a specific function in the body and will show doctors where in the body that function is happening. Dr. Miller's team runs special chemical reactions to create a tracer from a drug used in the brain. The new tracer must pass quality control. It is purified and checked that it will function properly. The tracer is ready to use. Good work, Dr. Miller. The precious custom-made molecule is rushed to the PET clinic. Just the right level of radioactivity is measured out. Then it's injected into Dave's bloodstream. There'll be a sharp scratch. It's not long before Dave's brain has absorbed the tracer, and the clever chemistry gets to work. Inside Dave, an incredible reaction is taking place. The radioactive atom on the tracer loses its radioactivity, giving off a subatomic particle called a positron. It's just like the tiny negatively charged electrons found on all atoms, except that the positron is positively charged. So when the positron hits an electron, at just the right speed, they combine and destroy each other. The energy is released as 2 gamma rays that travel straight out of Dave's body in opposite directions. The PET scanner is like a big ring of Geiger counters. When it detects 2 gamma rays on opposite sides of the ring, the doctors can calculate where in Dave's body the tracer must be. By detecting thousands of these events every second, and with some clever computer processing, Dave's brain activity is revealed in 3 dimensions, something no other imaging technique can do. For Dave, it was just a small injection. That wasn't so bad, huh? All made possible by the incredible technology of the tracer. The potential for PET is enormous. Different tracers can detect cancer, test heart function, and even track Alzheimer's. The PET scan has revealed Dave's brain is functioning as it should. Dave, you're A-OK. In the next hour or so, his radioactivity levels will be back to normal. It's another successful job for the incredible tracers. But the work of Dr. Miller goes on as he continues creating new tracers to help those in need.
Okay, well, now that you have that primer behind you, so essentially PET scans are nuclear-based radioactive tracers that you inject. And in this case, especially with Alzheimer's, they will stick to the proteins that they feel cause the problems that you have with Alzheimer's, and allow these to be visually confirmed and scanned, and then they would show up brightly. And the fact is, PET scanning works very similar to the other types of scannings we talked about, CT, as well as geez, no, I've already forgotten it. MRI scanning using a technique called tomography. You take these slices, then you can create a 3D model. And since this kind of like lights up, it allows them to clearly see how much of this tracer is being collected by these particular proteins, and they can tell the extent. And so they've said that this not only allows them to detect it, but also determine when it isn't really in this particular diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and they can look at other forms of dementia. So I think this is pretty cool. Obviously, what we're starting to see is the ability to, in this case with pets, modify the molecules so that it works specifically with a particular area. They're already been using it in cancer, and now that we're seeing other issues, as in case of the Alzheimer's. So really excited about this as well, because I have a tendency to forget a lot of things. Luckily, I don't think my father has too many issues. So they say that Alzheimer can be genetic, and or mostly genetic. So we'll see if I have any issues, at least not on my father's side. Okay, well, let's get into the final areas, and I'm going to run through this quickly. Sadly, I always find myself running out of time at this point. So let's see, I guess we can do this. Let's look at, we did that already. Whereas, don't want that. So let me jump back to my cell, and let me find the little video. Okay, so one of the things that I found kind of drab in a few of these AR examples, mixed reality examples, is you can bring in objects, but it's great, as I mentioned, with the mixed reality tool that we just saw in the Windows 10 Fall Creator Edition, that they were static objects, but wouldn't it be kind of nice to liven things up? So if you saw the little GIF I created from Twitter, which I'll show even more a demo, I literally put President Trump and Hillary Clinton. If you remember, on the 19th of October last year was the debate. And so I kind of put them in there and took in for some of the dialogue recordings of him talking, and then had him gesticulate this. I didn't actually have it synchronized to mouth movements, but they're far enough away that you, in my opinion, didn't really notice it. And since he kind of is very dynamic in his posturing, I think it kind of carried off well, where she seemed reserved. So it was kind of a fun play. Also, if you've been following the show, you know that I'm kind of not in Trump's camp, and feel that he's done a few things that are a little bit disconcerting right now. And with all the other controversies in the news about sexual scandals, and yeah, I have some obvious issues with that. So I'll play that a little bit later, but I wanted to animate that. So I had created some characters before both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and then I brought them back out to see how well Mixo worked with them, and let the little demo explain itself, and then I will go into the Mixamo cloud. By the way, Mixamo is the company that Adobe bought and now calls the product Adobe Fuse. So here we go.
Today, I'm introducing a new workflow that lets you easily comp human characters into your design projects for layouts, images, photo shoots, concepts, and more. Now you can easily and quickly create customized 3D characters with a new desktop app called Adobe Fuse CC Preview, and then incorporate those characters into your designs in Photoshop. Start by building a character from presets in Fuse CC Preview. Then you have full creative control over how it looks, the body, the clothing, colors, textures, even down to specific features. Then save to your Creative Cloud library and access it directly in Photoshop. Here you can apply a hand-picked pose or find one that works by scrubbing through an entire animation. Now you can play around with the head and the eye placement and adjust the perspective and even the lighting, giving you that flexibility you need so you end up with that exact look that you want. And you can work with it just like any other layer in Photoshop. Just imagine all the possibilities for bringing 3D characters into your work. We can't wait to see what you make.
Okay, so let's bring up something that I had created. So this is my little, and again, I wanted to make this very polygon efficient. So it's a little crude, but it gets the point across. I actually brought her face in from another application, but Adobe Fuse and another product that I use, I'll talk a little bit later in a different show, called Face Creator, now creates Fuse models with bodies that can be imported. So you import your model, and then you can attach, let's see, different, there she's jumping. So you can obviously attach different animations. They've got several hundred types. Here's one looking around. So there she goes. She's looking around. And there she's yelling. So if you take these, you can then download them in different formats, FBX specifically for Unity, or Collada, and with skin, which includes the model itself, or without, which is just the animation. And then you can do keyframe reduction. You can identify the number of frames that are used, and then hit cancel. I'll hit cancel, and then you download it. And then you can bring this directly in the Unity. And even with animations, what I was able to do is just duplicate the animation, then remove the whole model to save space. But there you go. You can see what is capable with it. And let's see, if I have it set up, I'll go ahead and bring it up. But the version on the, at least in Windows, is called Adobe Fuse, and this has some cool features too. So let's see here. Here we go. I should be able to bring it up. Okay. So.
You're listening to All Things 3D.
Okay, so it looks like it came up. So the cool thing about Adobe Fuse is that if you need to create characters very quickly, you have the ability, let's bring up this guy, to very quickly bring up, you can add torsos, you can add legs, you can add arms, and very quickly have a posable animated character. And then you can customize it. And so there's a lot of sliders. You can identify how large the biceps are. As you can see, it's growing dynamically. How large the fingers are short. Shoulders. So it's very dynamic, very fluid, and you have a lot of things you could randomize. So if you wanted to quickly get a character that looks different, then let's randomize all. So you notice the different shapes that this character is taking. So if you wanted to create characters very quickly to be used in a game or an augmented reality, you then can close the character in different clothing. They have templates that you can download if you want to design your own clothes in a 3D package and then bring them in. Let's put some shoes on them. Yeah, let's put some boots on them. Okay, and then we can put on some pants. There we There he is. He's already ready to hit the field. Put some gloves on him. So you can continue to go through there. You can modify the texture colors. So there's a lot of things you can do if you need to create some generalized characters. Once you're done with it, you then just hit, you can either save it to your library or you can send it to Mixamo, which is the program that I just showed you. And you just hit save. And then what it does is it brings it up there and then converts it in, or either attaches an armature and then converts it so that you can animate it with a lot of the animations that was shown right here. And then you can, like I said, download it and immediately put it to use in Unity with different animations. And then within Unity, you can, and I think I can bring that up, essentially take these different animations and using their animation tools, fuse the different animations together, add tags to them so that you can control them in your scripts and have your characters do things. And I'm looking at doing something pretty fun with AR. If you remember the Rockin' Sock'em robots, I was thinking of doing something like that in AR. So this would be a great tool to do that with. You could create your characters and then bring them in, and then by using a few control buttons on your phone, put that out in front of you. Might make it cloud-based or at least internet-based so that you could play with a friend and literally have robots in your living room fighting it out. So that's kind of a goal that I have. But in doing so, I thought I'd create the little video that I'll show a little bit later. The other thing, and while I'm on that, and I will go ahead and move into, and I kind of talked about it already and a little bit, but this is, screen's is going to be a little bit dirty. I apologize. This is the Pixel XL or Pixel 2 XL. And, you know, a lot of people, let me bring up the larger screen. There you go. A lot of people have already complained that they think the color or the screen is muted, but I think I can answer a lot of those questions. One thing, when I initially brought it up, I thought the screen was bright, vibrant, and didn't understand what the problem was with that other people were having. Some people think it was a certain batch of devices or screens that some of the early reviewers were getting, but my screen looks great. I actually like the color temperature of it. Some people think that the colors are muted. I'm all for that. I don't like a lot of saturation. So I'm very pleased with it. Some people say there's a blue cast, and let's see if I can actually show that. You might be able to see it a little bit, but as you can see, it's not really noticeable. And I put up a couple of images. I don't have them here, but I found the big reason to do this is when you're using it outside, it helps isolate glare because you have basically a circular polarizer. And then I did a little more research, and it appears that OLEDs and AMOLEDs use a circular polarizer because since the screen actually is an emission device, it helps prevent reflections back into it, which can bleed into the other pixels or subpixels. So clearly, from my perspective, the screen is more than adequate. I don't have an issue with tilting it and seeing the blue tint because for me, it's not a huge issue. And let's see, I'm going to see how I can do this. I've got another camera. Let's see if I can bring this camera up. There we go. Okay. Well, let me see. Let me just see if I can do something real quick. Okay. So I should be able to give you a kind of a zoom view on the screen while I run one of the demos, so you can see it for yourself. Okay, so it should focus on that. Okay, oops. Okay, so there we go. All right, so let's bring up one of the demos. Let's see what I want to bring up. Let's see, we can bring up the graveyard. Let's see. Okay, so right now I have it set up for the dimension. And let me do one other thing real quick. Okay, so I guess we're good. So as you can see, the screen is fairly sharp and vibrant. The most important thing from my perspective was also having good contrast and blacks, and that seems to be adequate. Let me bring up my Daydream version of, I actually won't be able, I get the controller, so I should be able to do this. So let's actually bring up Daydream so you can see that. So again, the reason I'm doing this way instead of using the Chrome cast device, because I want you to see for yourself what it looks like. Now, clearly, let's see. Okay, so there's my controller. So as you can see, here's the lights, but I'm off. Notice there isn't, if I rotate the screen slightly, you can see the advantage of the circular polarizer. Screen is still, I have some lights that could cause the screen to be a little bit less, what do you want to call it, lit, more reflections. As you can see, here's the lights, but the glare is fairly nice. I'm rotating the little controller in my hand. As you can see, there's some little controller indicator. I don't know why that's showing up. There you go. So I found when using this in the Daydream headset or my own Neo Play Dream Shredder that it was very vibrant, seemed to be, in fact, in my opinion, better than the Pixel XL. The screen actually makes a difference, but keep in mind, if you're using the older version, it will cut off more of the edges. So I would probably think that you'd want, if you get this particular phone, to get the newer Daydream viewer with a little bit more edge displacement and the wider lenses to take advantage of, obviously, the longer screen. The other fact is that it runs fluidly. Some of my apps that were designed that kind of lagged in the previous Pixel seem to react a little bit better, one being the Graveyard. So if you've got a new phone, go out and look for Graveyard for Daydream and try it out. It's fairly easy to work with. You use the controller to move forward and backwards. It can be a little nauseating, so if you're sensitive to VR sickness, you may want to try it out first. But the idea is to run around the graveyard, pick up pumpkins, get them back to your cart before the zombies and other characters in the graveyard grab you. So I am very pleased with it. So let's see if I can bring up my little device. Let me bring it up. Where is it? I don't know how it's going to play out.
No, I didn't say that at all. I don't think you understood what was said. This
Hey,
was
guy.
locker room talk. I'm not proud of it. I apologize to my family. I apologize to the American people. Certainly, I'm not proud of it. But this is locker room talk. I'm very embarrassed by it. I hate it. But it's locker room talk, and it's one of those things. Great respect for women. Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Frankly, you hear these things I said. And
So let's see what it looks like when I'm casting it. Well, I didn't try it before the show. Normally you have to cast it using Google Home, and don't see an option to cast without Google Home, so I may need to download it. Oh well, I'll leave it for another day. So there you go. My opinion is, if you're afraid that you know what? Did I not have that up and running? Geez, I apologize for that. I'll have to cut that out. Okay, so here's the screen again. I'll bring it up. So in my opinion, the quality is vibrant. I'm not, there you can see a little bit of the blue cast that they speak of. But I found that it helps reduce glare when you're outside. So to me, it's a good trade-off, because normally when you're using it in your Daydream viewer, it's direct head-on. Here's the Dream It little app that I created. So there's your balloons. And this is also in the App Store. And so there I am in the Daydream. So I think it's more than adequate. Okay, so let's move on. Let's see, I'll give an update on the actual budget VR headset, and I'll have a more advanced demo for next week. But it's almost finished. I put in the couple of jacks and changed out the i3 with an i5 Kaby Lake chip. And so I'm now ready to do some testing with it. I found that if you have adequate power, and that's the important thing, with the 75 watt drawing 1050 Ti, as well as the 35 watt drawing, so you already got over 100 watts for those two units, and then the motherboard. So this thing runs about 125, 135 watts. I do have an 80 watt per hour battery hooked up to it, so I get about 45 minutes on a charge. So I will be walking around with it using both Steam VR and mixed reality next week. So it's pretty good. I may want to design a more sleek case for it. The other thing, I just got my Costco what do you want to call it, coupon book, and they have a Acer gaming laptop 15.8, which is, you know, obviously not a small laptop, but for $699 you get an i7 plus the 4 GB version of the 1050. Now I don't know if it's a 1050 Ti or overclocked, more than likely not, since it's on a laptop. So this would be the only reason you'd still want to go with discrete micro ITX type components, is because you can use desktop components, CPUs as well as GPUs. Whereas in a laptop, they're normally either the clocks are scaled back or the chip is a little different. So the performance has never always been the same. So I'll have to see if somebody does some reviews from a VR perspective. If you've got a Microsoft mixed reality headset, it should be a no-brainer. If you don't have a gaming laptop already, might want to take a look at it. I will talk more about that again next week as I find more information about it. And let's see what else I have. I was going to talk about Reallusion, but I didn't install it, so I'm going to hold off on that. And so that's about it. Look for a video of the the output from HillaryKicksARss, and coming out as a separate little video. And let's see, I think that's about it. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you next week. And this is another episode of All Thing 3D in Review for 10/21/2017. Bye.